Alright, time's up. Stop writing, put your pens down and tie your answer scripts together. Well, is that the final voice that you hear in the exam hall and then you start to panic because you run out of time and you're still in the midst of writing your essay response? No worries. Here are some tips on how you can write faster in exams, and I'm going to give you 7 crucial tips. So do remember to watch until the end of the video where I will show you where you can actually speed up your writing by choosing the right pens. Now the first tip that I have for you is please don't pause and think for too long. Now a lot of times students are required to write long form of responses like essays. So whenever you have a long form response, that includes some form of planning, and the planning itself can take time. And some students just tend to spend a tad too long on the planning process and then they spend too much time. Now the anatomy of the essay itself, meaning the structure of the essay, should be in your head and not on your paper. In other words, what should go into the introduction, what should go into the first paragraph, second paragraph, and finally your conclusion, that should all be in your head. So you don't have to spend too much time trying to craft out the structure of the essay during the planning itself, and that will help you to save some time. Now remember that workings and drafts are just not part of the final outputs and they are not worth any mark. So even if you spend an hour long working on your drafts and your drafts look great, you are not going to submit that as your final answer and they are not going to be worth anything. Okay, your actual final writing, that is going to be your final response, and that's going to be worth the marks that you will be awarded. Now the typical planning time for an essay is usually between 10 to 15 minutes for most examinations. So obviously this will vary depending on the exercise or the type of exam that you are going to sit for. So just make sure that you allocate just enough time, adequate amount of time for the planning, and do not overdo it by just sitting there pausing and just taking too long in general just to plan for your essay. Now the next tip I have for you is never pick an unfamiliar topic. The reason why is that you will need more time for brainstorming, and brainstorming can take a lot of time. Working on an unfamiliar topic also means that you're unsure of how the ideas interplay, and therefore you may require more thought and more time to work on your response. Now for important academic examinations, while you're sitting for the exam itself, it is always not a good idea to take big risks. This is not the time where you get big risk, big return. That's not the case. You're not making an investment. You are trying to submit a high quality response, okay, within a given time frame, and in order to score as high marks as possible. So trying out new or unfamiliar topics should occur during the practices itself and not during the real thing, okay? And the third tip that we have here is don't start writing until you are confident of the points, right? What points you're going to include in your answer should happen or should be decided during the planning phase itself. This is to prevent multiple cancellations, because if you're unsure, then you will start cancelling part of your writing. And some students do cancel parts of the writing in the midst of the exam, or others cancel the entire essay and have to start from scratch. Well, this can be a disaster if you're sitting for an important national exam, and whether you can come back from it depends on how much time you have left. If possible, try to avoid this scenario altogether, and don't get into the habit of making multiple cancellations, because you're wasting a lot of time when you're canceling entire paragraphs of the essay just because you're unsure and you start to question the validity of some of the writing that you have. And like I said, this is a complete time waster. And next tip we have is to be confident of your grammar for very similar reasons. You want to prevent yourself from having to go back and forth correcting grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes. Now I see some students, whenever they are writing, they spend a lot of time cancelling off the grammar, because they have to go back and check their grammar so that they don't make so many grammar mistakes. So you see a lot of cancellations, you see a lot of correction tape on top of correction tape on top of correction tape, and that is taking up a lot of time. So when they submit their paper, although the overall quality of the paper is good, but it's clear that they have spent too much time trying to correct the grammatical as well as the spelling mistakes for their writing. Okay, you write fluently to score marks and also to save time. And try to become familiar with a variety of sentence structures so that you can use them fluently during the exams. If you're always struggling with grammar, you're not very sure where you should put your commas, then you find yourself having to spend time always going back to look at your grammar structures, to look at your sentence structures, and that is wasting more time in the process. Now, the exam time is not the time to spend time questioning your own grammar. You should have done enough practice up to the point when you sit for the exam, so that during the exam itself, you can use the sentence structures very carefully. And the fifth tip, and we're just halfway through the video, okay, more good tips coming your way, so do stay tuned. And the fifth tip is to adopt some form of cursive writing if you are not already doing so, because the cursive writing can actually help you to write faster, because you don't have to frequently lift your pen off the paper. So what happens is that the writing is more continuous as your pen moves from one alphabet to another. Now, cursive writing, if you're new to this, requires some practice. The idea is to keep at it until you become good and fast. Keep at it, keep practicing until you get to the point where your cursive writing is faster than your usual writing. Then you know you have succeeded. And continue to use more of cursive writing, and then you'll get into the habit of being able to write faster and faster. Next tip, tip number 6, always focus on legibility and not the beauty of your handwriting. Now, the one with the highest score is often not the one with the most beautiful or even the neatest handwriting, because that's not what examiners are looking for. It's often the most accurate response that the student is giving to the examiner in order to be awarded the marks. Therefore, handwriting needs to be legible, meaning other people can easily read and decipher what you're writing without having to kill too many brain cells. Okay? And it need not be the most beautiful or even be the neatest. Stop worrying about how neat or pretty your handwriting is so that you can go faster. Okay, the key point for this entire tip or for this entire slide is that neatness and how pretty your handwriting is not the most important. Now, you want to be neat, but only to a certain extent, as long as it doesn't affect the legibility of your overall handwriting, and you are good to go. And the last and final tip that I have in this presentation is to always pick a pen that works for you. Now, I understand that this is an interesting topic for many students because there are different types of pens in the market. Now, the most commonly seen are gel pens, ballpoint pens, and fountain pens. So which type of pens do we choose so that we can write the fastest during the examination and save time, so that at the end of the day, the pen that we choose do not work against us. It should work for us and help us to write legibly and at the same time write fluidly. Now, understand that gel pens have stronger inks and writing looks bolder and more confident, and some people like that. However, they have the tendency to imprint on the back side of the page because the inks are so strong. If you are writing on a thin piece of foolscap paper and you flip to the back, you can see that some of the writing is visible, okay, at the back of the page. Ballpoint pens are smoother and therefore generates less friction, and that means that it moves more fluidly across the paper. However, some people just do not like the intensity of the ink. They feel that the ink is not bold enough and it's not intense enough for them. So this is very much a personal preference. Which do you prefer? Which do you prefer? Let us know in the comments section below. And as for fountain pens, they are usually not recommended for exams because they tend to smudge too easily and require a certain level of skill in order to use carefully. Now, my personal recommendation is to use a ballpoint pen that has a 0.7 mm tip. You don't want to choose a pen that has too small a tip like a 0.5 mm because then the ink may be very thin and may not be very visible, and that may in turn affect the legibility of your handwriting. In turn, you also don't want a pen that has too big a tip. Your lines will become very thick and your words may appear to be somewhat bunched up together, and then they may be harder to read as well. But in any case, like I said, I know this is very much a personal preference. Just pick a pen that works best for you, the tried and tested pen that you think gives you the ability to write the fastest during an important examination. And with that, we have come to the end of the video. Hopefully, we have picked up some useful tips along the way. Do remember to leave a like and a subscribe, and I will see you soon in the next video. Bye bye.